Hey there, and welcome on back. As always, I'm Carl with Target's Tattoo, absent-minded professor of knives and all things sharp. It's Monday, so it's another knife basics, which Daddy forgot to teach you. Today, we're looking at Damascus. Yes, Damascus makes beautiful knives, gorgeous swords. It's just sometimes called water steel by some people. It is just gorgeous. But it's also something that'll create controversy and arguments among knife lovers, knife collectors, bladesmiths, and historians for that matter, more than just about any other term in the knife world. Why? I'll get to that in a minute. First, let's get some syllabus work out of the way, shall we? For those of you who are new to the channel, welcome. We do a lot of knife reviews, plus we do this series, Knife Basics, What Your Daddy Forgot to Teach You. Yes, it's aimed at those new to the knife collecting world. Hopefully it gives you a basis of things so you better understand what we're talking about as we talk about our favorite little toys. For those who have been around a while and came back, I'm glad to see you again. Hope you've got your pens and paper ready because we've got some good information for you here today. But first, one quick question. Have you subscribed yet? Yeah, I know, I ask that every time. And I'm going to keep on asking it. Especially when you, right over there in Arkansas, I know you haven't subscribed yet. And that's silly, because it's so simple, man. You just hit that button right down there. It says subscribe. Then you hit the bell next to it. Get notified every time I put up a neat new video. Easy enough for you, and it's a win-win situation. You get notified every time I get up a neat new video. And let's be honest, the more subscribers I have, the easier it is to get these things to do neat new videos. But we're here to talk about knives. So, what is Damascus? Other than possibly the supermodel of the knife world. Well, it's actually a mixture of two steels, but it's got an interesting history. And you're saying, well, wait a minute, you were talking about how it's controversial. You have to understand its history before you can understand why it's so controversial. The original Damascus was basically a term coined by the Europeans back during the Middle Ages. Best steel at the time actually came from India and parts of Sri Lanka. And it came in ingots that they called woots. And it was fantastic steel. But no one quite knew why it was so good. All they knew was it was best steel out there at the time. And so the Middle Easterns, especially the Syrians, would import it into Damascus, Syria, which at the time was a huge trade town. They had masters of all types there, especially master swordsmiths and bladesmiths. And they were taking this steel from India, the woots, and they were turning it into gorgeous, beautiful swords that were sharper and stronger than anything the Europeans could do. Well, the dumb Europeans, I mean, most of them couldn't read or write. You've got to remember, this is Dark Ages. Most of the civilization they had gotten from Rome was long gone by this time. If they could read or write, they had hammered into them by the monks at the time. These dumb barons and whatnot had no clue India even existed, or where it was, or what it was. But they knew very well where Damascus was, because they had competed so many times in so many crusades that they knew the Middle East fairly well. They didn't know anything beyond the Middle East. As far as they were concerned, that was the edge of the world, and if you kept going too far past the Middle East, you were just going to fall off. But they knew where the Middle East was. And they knew that these beautiful swords they were lusting over came from Damascus, Syria. So they started calling them Damascus. But over time, the mines in Sri Lanka in India started playing out. They weren't getting quite the same quality ore that they were, and the quality of the blades started going down until sometime in late 1600s, early 1700s, some put it as late as 1750, it was completely lost. No one could get the steel anymore. And we didn't have enough understanding of chemistry and physics and metallurgy to recreate it. So things kind of fell to the wayside until some master gunsmiths in Europe found that one method of making shotgun barrels where they were laminating or forge welding alternating pieces of iron and steel to get better shotgun barrels. Admittedly, these barrels still wouldn't hold up to modern powder charges, but they did better than anything else at the time. And people started turning to the German gunsmiths that made these things, and they noticed that the barrels looked very much like the Damascus steel they were getting from Damascus, Syria. And so they started playing around and found they could do the same thing for knives and swords. And before too long, Damascus, Spain became the center of sword making and knife making in Europe, and they were using this pattern welded method that had come to be called Damascus to make their swords. And quite frankly, when I was a teenager and in my early 20s, I had never heard of Damascus, India, or Damascus, Syria. But I'd heard of Damascus. I knew some of the best swords and knives at the time were coming out of Spain, so I just assumed Damascus came from Damascus, Spain. Boy, was I wrong. So here's the problem. The original Damascus was made from Wootz steel from India. It had impurities in it that gave it that watermark green pattern that is so beautiful. And it came to be known as a mark of how excellent the steel was, because at the time it really was. Admittedly, modern steel, especially some of the super steels, is a whole lot better. But it stuck in people's minds that this pattern of steel was the best steel out there. So, you've got a couple camps. You've got some who insist that the only true Damascus is the stuff that was made from Wootz ingots way back when, before the mines played out, and that we can't make any of it anymore. You've got some that kind of sort of agree with him, but think that they have figured out how to duplicate it using modern technology. And then you've got those who have used the methods developed by those German gunmasters and moved into Spain, which is more properly called pattern welding, but has been called Damascus for longer than this country has been around. So, which is the real Damascus? Be plain blunt, other than to historians and museums and some of the high-end collectors who have a hell of a lot more money than I do, does it really matter? Either way, you're looking at some beautiful stuff. Matter of fact, let's take a quick break from looking at my ugly mug. Let's look at a slideshow, see just how beautiful some of this stuff can really be. This is a raindrop pattern. Gorgeous, isn't it? Some more raindrop pattern Damascus. Just look how beautiful this is. Most of these pictures were taken at Blade Show last year. And it just... so much beauty. And of course, some people marry the Damascus with really wild handles. Beautiful Viking style sword. Look at the patterning in this. I mean, real craftsmanship to get that pattern out. More raindrop. This is the ladder pattern. It's called that because it looks almost like rungs of ladder. But you get the idea. So you get an idea of why I love Damascus so much. It's just so gorgeous. And it's brought more people into collecting knives than any other one thing I can think of. How do they make it? Well, if you watch Forged in Fire, some other shows, you've seen them do it. There's a lot of different ways. The most common way is take two different steels, cut them to equal lengths, stack them up together, then heat them up and beat them down thin until it's all one piece of metal. Matter of fact, I considered trying to demonstrate it for you, but to be completely honest with myself, I'm just not that good at forging yet. But I'll add a few links here that will maybe give you some of that information. In the meantime, I hope you got a little bit out of this. There's a lot more I could say about Damascus, but don't want to overload you at the beginning, and we'll talk about it some more. If you have any comments of your own, don't hesitate to add them on down below. Love to hear from each and every one of you. If you got anything you'd like me to cover, go ahead and tell me that too. In the meantime, got something up here from Walter Searles. He is a great knife maker. Got something down here that also has to do with Damascus if you want more information. See how that goes for you. And of course, as always, just hit the little target here to subscribe. We'll see you next week though. Take care now. Bye.